everybody. Are we going into a recession? Are we in a recession? When will it start? And why does that matter? I'm Andrew Whalen, and I'm here to help make sense of your wealth. Well, based off of this chart right here, everyone's been searching that we're basically in a recession right now. That paired with a large number of tech companies that have seen massive amounts of layoffs, including 15,000 or so from Intel, 15,000 or so from Dell, as well as the most recent announcement from Cisco. You can see even just to start this year, tech layoffs have been enormous. Now we have to remember and put that into context. These companies have seen huge amounts of expansion over the last couple of years on the backs of AI. But what are the CEOs saying? So you can see from this trend here, CEOs on their earnings calls have referenced economic downturns or recessions the lowest amount since 2021. These are the people that are in the trenches, that are living and breathing within the economy, telling us that they're not seeing a lot on the horizon for what may come from a potential recession. But that doesn't stop us from searching recession as soon as the market goes down a few percentage points. The probability of recessions in the short term, they're fairly low, somewhere around 20 to 30% over the next 3 to 6 months. And we have to remember the opposite end of that trade is 70 to 80% probability of not a recession. The reason for this is we're starting to see a lot of economic data that is supporting maybe a slight support system in the economy that could subvert a recession. One being trucking tonnage. So as you'll see from this chart here, you're starting to see a slight uptick in the amount of shipping that's done with truckings across the United States. You tend to actually see that improvement coming out of a slowdown, not going into a recession. Let's pair that with European Air Passage Index. So this looks at air travel all throughout Europe. Europe's economy is slightly a little bit weaker than the United States. Still no sign of a recession there. But Atlanta Fed forecast GDP is posting an estimated 2.9% GDP growth rate for the third quarter, well above estimates for negative GDP growth, which would tend to lead to some sort of recessionary conditions. Now, something important to point out is that unemployment has been rising. That's been one of the big fears over the last couple of weeks as we start to steadily see unemployment rising. There's something known as the Psalm rule. So that indicates that anytime there's been a 0.5% increase in unemployment, that tends to always lead to a recession. Now, the founder of this rule, she came out recently and said, wait a minute, let's put the brakes on that. That doesn't necessarily mean that this time it's going to be a recession. But we have to remember, unemployment starts to rise gradually, as you can see from history in this chart that goes back to 1960, and then all of a sudden it hits. So even though unemployment is rising, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're in a recession right now, but it could mean that it could be on the horizon in the future. Lastly, the Federal Reserve and what they do with interest rates tends to have a big impact on not only the markets, but also the economy as a whole. And this chart suggests, this goes back to the early 1980s, that the Fed tends to cut interest rates towards the start of a recession. Now, many are estimating that the first interest rate cut will be this September. So does that mean that we're really close to a recession? Not based off of the economic data. But how does that affect you? So as the economy enters into a recession, chances for unemployment continue to rise. Stocks get a little bit more volatile, and that can have a big impact on everybody's retirement. One main thing to focus on is how everybody is invested, how your personal finances are invested, and are they in tune with the level of risk that you're willing to take at which stage of life you're at and where you want to be in the future. So as I'd like to call it, we're not in a recession yet. The economy seems to be relatively stable. Unemployment is rising, and the Fed's got a lot of work ahead of it. So remember, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense.